Aerial footage of the Ukraine-Russia border and major cities like Kyiv and Moscow. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has its roots in centuries of shared history and geopolitical tension, but it erupted dramatically in 2014 and escalated further in 2022, shaking the global order. In this video, we'll explore the historical background, the key events leading to the conflict, and the current situation. From the 9th century to the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991. To understand the conflict, we must go back to the medieval era when both Russia and Ukraine were part of Kievan Rus, an early Slavic state. Over the centuries, Ukraine was often caught between powerful neighbors, Russia, Poland, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Visuals of maps of Ukraine's changing borders and iconic images like Kyiv's St. Sophia Cathedral. By the 18th century, much of Ukraine came under Russian control. It wasn't until the collapse of the Russian Empire in 1917 that Ukraine briefly declared independence, but was soon incorporated into the Soviet Union. Ukraine's independence and Russia's influence. Footage from the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 and Ukraine's independence celebration. Ukraine gained its independence in 1991 following the dissolution of the Soviet Union. However, Russia continued to exert significant influence over Ukrainian politics, economy, and its energy sector. Display visuals of political leaders like Ukrainian President Leonid Kuchma and Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Energy pipelines. Ukraine's geopolitical position between Russia and Western Europe made it a focal point for East-West tensions. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Ukraine oscillated between pro-Russian and pro-Western leadership. 2004 Orange Revolution and the Medan Uprising. 2014 footage of the Orange Revolution protests in Kyiv and dramatic images of the Medan Square protests in 2014. In 2004, the Orange Revolution broke out in response to a rigged presidential election favoring pro-Russian candidate Viktor Yanukovych. A peaceful protest movement led to a revote, which brought the pro-Western Viktor Yushchenko to power. 10 years later, the stakes were higher. In 2014, after Yanukovych, who was re-elected in 2010, rejected a major trade deal with the European Union, mass protests erupted in Kyiv's Medan Square. The movement, known as the Medan Uprising, led to Yanukovych's ousting and his flight to Russia. Annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass. Display maps showing Crimea and Donbass, with visuals of Russian troops and separatist forces. Russia responded to the Ukrainian uprising by annexing Crimea in March 2014. This marked the first time since World War II that a European country had seized territory from another by force. Meanwhile, pro-Russian separatists in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine declared independence with covert Russian military support. Footage of street fighting in Donetsk and Luhansk, and the international response at the United Nations. The conflict escalated into a full-scale war between Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed separatists. Despite numerous ceasefires, the war has claimed over 14,000 lives and displaced millions by 2021. Full-scale invasion in 2022. Footage of Russian tanks crossing into Ukraine, shelling of cities like Mariupol and Kharkiv, and scenes of refugees. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, citing security concerns over NATO's eastward expansion and Ukraine's growing ties with the West. Major Ukrainian cities like Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Mariupol became battlegrounds. The world watched in shock as Europe faced its largest land war since World War II. Show maps of Russian advances and retreats, civilian evacuations, and international responses. The invasion led to widespread devastation. Millions of Ukrainians fled as refugees, and the West responded with unprecedented sanctions on Russia. Despite initial gains, Russian forces faced fierce resistance from Ukrainian soldiers and civilians, leading to a protracted and bloody conflict. The current situation. 2024 display footage of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and international leaders at summits, weapons shipments arriving in Ukraine. As of 2024, the war continues, with Ukrainian forces reclaiming parts of the occupied territories. Western countries, led by the United States and European Union, have provided significant military aid to Ukraine, including advanced weapon systems. Meanwhile, Russia remains under heavy sanctions, and its economy and international standing have taken a hit. Show visuals of drone warfare, trench combat in eastern Ukraine, and diplomatic negotiations in Europe. Peace remains elusive, with both sides digging in for a prolonged conflict. Diplomatic efforts have so far failed to bring a lasting resolution, as Russia seeks to maintain its control over Crimea and parts of the Donbass, while Ukraine insists on reclaiming all its territories. Global impact and future outlook. Show visuals of rising food prices, global protests, and energy crises caused by the war. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has reverberated globally, affecting energy prices, food security, and geopolitics. Europe faces a deepening energy crisis, as many countries cut ties with Russian oil and gas. Meanwhile, global food shortages, exacerbated by the war, have hit developing countries hardest. Footage of global protests against the war, images of world leaders speaking at the UN as the conflict drags on. The world watches anxiously. Will diplomacy prevail, or will this become a long, grinding war with no clear resolution in sight? Visuals of Ukrainian cities rebuilding, soldiers, and peace rallies. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is more than a war over territory. It's a battle for national identity, sovereignty, and global influence. While both sides continue to fight, one thing is clear: the outcome of this war will shape the future of Europe and the world for years to come. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more updates on global geopolitics. We have some amazing videos coming up, so stay tuned and make sure to hit the subscribe button for more.